All right. Rule proposals. They are out, and they come in two waves, or at least this year they came in two waves. One, all the team proposals that got tucked into the late Monday afternoon hours, the first day of free agency and everything that was going on. And last night, late yesterday afternoon, the competition committee proposals get tacked on to the end. The biggest thing this year is what's not there. What's not there. Well, what hasn't been proposed by any team and what hasn't been adopted, accepted, and recommended by the competition committee is a ban on what has become the strategic use of the rule that allows teammates to push the player with the ball into the rugby maul that we have seen the Eagles work to perfection, to the point where if you need 7 yards, you may be able to get it. The moving pile of bodies, we thought that would be taken out of the game. Peter, unless the owners decide to do it on their own, which is possible but not likely, it's staying in the game for 2023, and I suspect in this copycat league that is the NFL, we're going to see more teams than the Eagles doing it on a regular basis.
You know, two thoughts, Mike. Number one, at the scouting combine, talking to people around the league, I got this sense that if Roger Goodell and the competition committee, and I believe that overall, the combination of Roger Goodell and the 8 members of the NFL competition committee, which modify/change rules every year, that the majority of people among those 9 believe that the rugby maul play, pushing the pile, has no place in football. But the only way that this group, the competition committee, was going to propose this is if it felt that it had a good chance to pass. And so for people to understand that, and for people to say, well, geez, why wouldn't they just bring it up so there could be some debate? The debate has already been done. And so rather than draw the lines and get people hard and fast on one side or the other, and get the proponents of the maul play to, you know, like Howie Roseman, obviously Nick Sirianni, and obviously now many others. Mike, the reason why this wasn't brought up is because the competition committee, Roger Goodell, everybody who believes that this is not a good play for the NFL, either in appearance or safety, it's because they could not assure themselves that 24 owners would vote to overturn this rule and take it out of the game. So what does that mean? It means that there are at least 9 teams in the NFL, after surveying the landscape, after talking to GMs, coaches, owners, there are at least 9 teams that would have voted against it. A rules change. So why bring it up and harden positions and have people saying that, hey, over my dead body will this come out of the game, even though nobody would say exactly that. But the one other thing I would say, Mike, is that the NFL every year says, got to make the game safer, got to make the game safer. And yet your most valuable players, your most expensive players are in the middle of, and will be in the middle more of, watch this year. Watch Geno Smith in Seattle. Pete Carroll says he may now go for putting more of these in his playbook. Sean Payton, who obviously is going to do it. He has said he's going to do it. So now Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts. Okay? And you tell me right now, and again, I'm not trying to be a fearmongerer, but this is a fact. Somebody's going to get hurt doing this. Somebody is going to get a separated shoulder. Look, if you've got 700 pounds of people behind you, and if you've got, remember the play in the Super Bowl, and I forget who it was, but you got a defensive tackle. It might have been Chris Jones. leaping over the pile to fly into and try to break up this wedge that Philadelphia was doing. Let's say it's Chris Jones or whoever it was, a 300-pound projectile coming right at your quarterback. And let's say he doesn't hurt his shoulder. Let's say for some reason it gets helmet to helmet and he gets concussed. I simply cannot square in any way how the NFL talks about player safety all the time. And they're saying we are going to put our most important players every week in the NFL at risk of injury because of a play that is not a football play. It's a football play now because they have made it a football play or allowed it to continue to be a football play. It's not what the people who invented this game, it is not what they envisioned. And I think it's just, honestly, I think it's a sad day for the NFL.
You make an excellent point. Well, several excellent points. I want to work backward. I think back to 10 years ago when between the Wildcat and the zone read and it was unstoppable, and what happened? Defenses spent time focusing on how to stop this new unstoppable thing. And guess what? They came up with a way to neutralize it, and then it lost its importance. Defensive coordinators are going to be coming up with strategies up to and including launching a 300-pound projectile right at the quarterback to keep other teams from doing this, to stop it, to slow it down. And at some point, somebody will get injured. If you have the quarterback as the guy who was caught in the middle of this massive humanity, at some point, it will result in an injury to the quarterback, and then that's when they'll decide they're going to get rid of it. I think back to how the rule came to be. It used to be you can't push, you can't pull the runner. In 2006, they took away the push part as a violation because it never got flagged. And it would happen spontaneously out in the open field from time to time. You'd see a lineman rush up from behind and give the guy a push, and nobody ever flagged it. So if they're never going to flag it, why have a rule against it? That's a far cry from teams realizing there's a strategic benefit to designing your plays in a way where the push is incorporated. And Peter, I don't know that this is something that I want to take credit for, that you and I should take credit for, but I remember back during the season when we talked about this on a Friday after the Eagles and the Texans played in Houston during the World Series, and we were just kind of riffing and having fun about the things teams could do. You put a Taysom Hill at quarterback. You put a defensive lineman at quarterback. You put two defensive linemen behind him, or defensive linemen, as the case may be. And you just you use the physics to your advantage. You could take this thing to the extreme. And it didn't quite happen that way, but after that, we started seeing more and more of this concerted effort. You see the guy go in motion who stops right behind the quarterback and pushes. You see the actual formation where there's three guys back there and they all just go straight for the quarterback and push him through. And the easy fix would be you can still push the runner outside the tackle box. Just that's the easy fix. And I have no idea why they're not even trying, why no team is even putting it on the table. I understand what you're saying about, well, they don't think they're going to have 24 votes, so they're not going to do it. Now, that presumes that every competition committee proposal gets passed, and they don't. So they must misread the room on other things about how many votes they're going to have. But any team can make the proposal. Any team that sees this as a negative can say, we don't think this is good for the game. We propose this change, and nobody did it. That's what's amazing to me. None of the 32 teams made a proposal to take that out of the game.
I agree with you, Mike, and you ask why the other things just get proposed. And I think the other things get proposed because in many cases, the competition committee legitimately wants to hear from ownership and from teams. What do you think of this? And I remember for years they had the let's push the extra point back, okay? And the reason that was on the agenda every year is that I think the competition committee wanted open discussion about that, about the extra point, because it seems so obvious, and they wanted to hear from the traditionalists who didn't want to change how the extra point was done, from from the 2-yard line and put back to the 15. And in this particular case, I believe that one of the reasons is that positions might harden to the point that it would make it more difficult in the future. Plus, it's, Mike, the other thing I should have said when we were discussing this, or I was making my point, is this. If the competition committee really wants something but doesn't propose it, many times it is because it isn't a unanimous feeling among the competition committee that this thing should be proposed. And in this particular case, I believe that there are a lot of teams in the NFL, a lot of teams who really admire what Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, the coaches, the staff of the Philadelphia Eagles have done. And it is sort of ingenious when you think about it. They took a rule and they took advantage of a rule. They did nothing wrong. This is not the Philadelphia Eagles basically saying, we are going to, take advantage of a rule and do something that is borderline illegal. This is not borderline illegal. It is incredibly legal to do what the Eagles are doing. And so I think there is a sentiment, and I got this sense from two general managers at the scouting combine. Why would we punish the Eagles for having the brains and the wherewithal to think of something well within the rules to take advantage of a rule, honestly, and do something that really helps your team? So I think that's another part of it. I think people don't want to penalize the Philadelphia Eagles. But I do think at the end of the day...
No, they'll just send a 300-pound lineman at their quarterback's knees. That's what they'll do. We don't want to punish the Eagles for it, but we're going to send our biggest, baddest ass defensive lineman straight at your quarterback. That's not consistent, Peter, but that's not consistent. Let's just get it out of the game. If the teams instead are going to say, we're going to come up with a way to make you regret doing it, just get it out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And Mike, to me, what Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, and Joe Cullen, the defensive line coach of Kansas City, last year did when they sent a defensive tackle as a human projectile at the rugby mall and basically said, okay, you guys are going to keep running this? We are going to send a 300-pound guy flying through the air to try to stop it. Now, he didn't stop it, so maybe they'll spend time and maybe they'll still do it. But what I'm saying is the end result of this, and again, I do not wish this to happen. I will not be happy if it happens. But the end result is somebody's going to get hurt. And it might be a big star player. And only then... it reminds me of the gun debate in our country. We keep thinking, well, if it happened at Sandy Hook and we didn't do anything about it, then we'll never do anything about it. In this particular case, I think if it does happen to a quarterback, a starting quarterback in the NFL who is knocked out because of a separated shoulder or a severe concussion because of this, then and only then will the NFL change. And that, to me, it's a sad commentary on the league, quite honestly.
Well, and it's not out of character, Peter. It's not. This is the way the NFL is. They are notoriously reactive, not proactive. It is amazing to me that for the amount of money that the people who are in these rooms are making and the expertise they supposedly have, they can't envision worst-case scenarios and engineer the rules around them. They're content to just let it ride, let it happen, and then when the crap hits the fan, oh, whoa, well, that's news to us. Oh, we had no idea. Well, we should change that rule. Well, What about everybody that was saying this is where it's going to lead? They do that with everything. They do it with everything. Yep. That is one of the biggest organizational flaws. I mean, owners, you're going to give Roger Goodell a new contract. You should put a codicil on there. You need to hire somebody who is an expert in projecting risk, understanding the ways things can go bad, and coming up with ideas for avoiding those things, such as let's get rid of this rule before it wipes out a franchise quarterback in week 1 and scraps your whole primetime schedule for the balance of the year, because now instead of having one of the top 5 quarterbacks, you've got just some guy that was hanging around the sideline that has to go out and play quarterback now. So, look, it's going to go a lot of other ways, too. You're going to see creativity from guys like Sean Payton. You're going to see a demand for guys like Taysom Hill. You may see others, not just quarterbacks, who are out there taking the snap. I think part of the challenge now, as the one-upsmanship that quarterbacks, or that coaches, like to engage in, Peter, will include expanding the mind, coming up with different ways to take advantage of the fact that it's open season on putting the, it's funny. It's the equivalent of, because every once in a while, you'll hear somebody say about hockey, like, why not just go out and get a giant to be your goalie who just takes up the whole space of the goal and just tell him to sit down, or just get big giant skates so he can just sit there and the puck never gets through. I mean, this is the equivalent of that. Let's go get the biggest human beings and put them on our side of the line. It's like tug of war in reverse. We're going to have a massive humanity. One guy's going to have the ball, and it's just going to move down the field. And it's kind of funny, but it's also not fun to watch.
That's the thing. Who looks at these huge scrums of humanity, these huge rugby mauls, as they're called in rugby? I was calling it a rugby scrum and got corrected about 17 times before I stopped calling it a rugby scrum. But who looks at these rugby mauls and said, I watch football to see 2 big people, a fullback and a tight end. I watch football to watch those guys push a quarterback against 7 people on the defense trying to stop him until somebody can stop the momentum of this. Where's the athleticism? There is no athleticism. All there is blunt force trauma. That's what it is. That is not what football is. Now, I know there are some people who say that, hey, look, you've got to control the line of scrimmage. And of course you do. And if you don't control the line of scrimmage, you're not going to win the game. I get that. This is different from controlling the line of scrimmage. This is basically playing push the pile until they make a rule that says we can't push the pile anymore. And you are going to see in 2023 3 or 4 times the amount of pile pushing that you saw in 2022. It is not good for football.
Yeah, and next year at this time, if that happens, if there's an injury, if it just looks bad, if enough people complain, then the leaders of the sport, the stewards of the game, will exert the leadership that they failed to exert this year. And it's a failure of leadership to not have someone who was able, we talk about what an agent can do for Lamar Jackson. A good leader can get the right people on board with the stuff you and I have been talking about for the past 20 minutes. It's not all that difficult. The concepts are not complicated, which is one of the reasons why I'm able to understand them. But it's an absence of leadership. And I point to the man whose name's on every football. The commissioner's the one who should have been pushing this through. He's the one who should understand how this can go badly for the game,
totally.
How this can go badly for the league, how this can go badly for the networks when franchise quarterback gets smushed and can't play for the rest of the season, and they've got 7 more primetime games. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.